Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Horror Room. I'm Travis Bruce, and today we're doing another Women of Horror Spotlight. Today with us, she's a special guest. Listen, she's a photographer, a horror fan, and she had a beautiful set of artwork that was at the Magic of Horror Film Festival that was called Ghost Roots, which I had the pleasure to see, and we're going to be showing a couple of them slides during this interview as well. I have with us Andrea Gluckman. Andrea, welcome to the Horror Room.
Thank you. Thank you, Travis.
So listen, you're a horror spooky photographer. Tell us a little bit about your inspiration when it came to Grassroots, and how did you get into horror photography?
Well, I appreciate that question because as you and I were talking a bit before we started recording, I'm one of the oddball horror fans in that, you know, with horror, there's the reptilian response of the jump scare. And then there is a psychological piece to it as well. And my nervous system is such that I don't do well with jump scares. If I'm out on those haunted hay rides, I'm punching and kicking people that grab me because my reflexes take over. At the same time, I am deeply, deeply, deeply compelled by paranormal, by anything relating to demonic forces, to especially to any kind of female power that shows up in different ways in horror movies. So I just want to be forthcoming about that I'm a total freak when it comes to some of the elements of horror that people love. Like when I watch with my kids, I literally cannot watch some of the things, but I will go there when it comes to The Exorcist. I mean, I will go there eyes wide open. So what drew me to horror largely, though, in horror photography is that, first of all, people who work in horror are fascinating. I mean, whatever, a very interesting set of individuals. And I feel like a lot of the rules that are put upon artists within any kind of festival or competition or like a gallery show, it can be very prescribed. And as a photographer, it's very prescribed. This is a landscape. This is a portrait. There is room for creativity, but not like there is in the horror genre. I feel like there is so much more freedom to be creative and expressive and break a lot of those social mores, in order to create. And I find that my work's better because of it. So I would say that that's really what drew me into that. And I realized that a lot of the work I've been doing for years really fits that, even though I didn't know at the time.
But I love, like, with Grassroots, you use a lot of contrast, and
yes,
with the shades and the day and the light, and it adds to that eeriness.
Yes, you're picking up on it. I'm so glad. One of the great things about being a photographer now, because I'm a kid from the 80s, so I was like back in the dark room being all angsty and that's where it all began. But now with post-processing, you really can manipulate those things much easier to create that atonality or a feeling of sickness, or you can do double exposures without even having to doubly expose, right? You can make composite images that create just enough of a pause that people that people have to take a moment with the piece. They can't just go, oh, that's interesting, flip the page. So like, what? Mm-hmm. It's that kind of uncanny valley feel, the backrooms feel, the devil's interval tritone feel. Like there's something that's unresolved about experiencing that artwork that bothers people. And that's what I like. I like to bother people.
And there's something, Andrea, there's something malice and disturbing about that old time look photography.
Yes.
Like you see, those old pictures from back in the, early photography days, I should say.
Yes.
And they look disturbing. They look like something's wrong.
They do. And that's why I love tintype. I mean, it's one thing to do tintype like the colloid plates, like I think Sally Mann, some famous folks have been doing, but there are also a lot of filters and ways you can texture digitally to get that same feel. And in those old processing methods, around the eyes, there are certain things that would end up processing or developing differently that over time, when we look at them, are just really freaking spooky. You just look and you're like, the eyes may be this kind of faded white. The line, the development process was so long, as that people couldn't really maintain a certain affect. It had to be flat. So I think there are a number of elements that make it feel, again, dissonant is really the word that I keep coming back to. There's a dissonance between that and what we think of today as photography. And that's why it spooks us out. And that's exactly why I use a lot of those things and I use, I take pictures of my kids when they were younger, because that's another element that, interestingly, like clowns or whatever, has this kind of dual use, right? In our psychology, that there's this beautiful little child, a little vulnerable, needy child. And then there's like the one that crawls out of the TV with her hair in her face and like climbs on the ceiling. I mean, And the same with clowns, right? You have your little, I've never liked clowns, but there's that sense of, it's part of childhood. And then there's the sense of you can't read the emotion fully and there's something disturbing. And then all of a sudden you're at it. Yeah.
I totally agree. But like, so I'm an 80s kid too, right? Grew up in the 80s. So I was born in the 80s and grew up in the 80s. And, when it comes to not even just photography, but film, like that old grainy look that you see in old horror films with the old VHS cameras, it just looks disturbing. There's something about it that's eerie. And it seems like photography now, whether it be filmmaking or even with, just still pictures, it's too pretty, it's too clean, it's too it's too beautiful. And it doesn't give you that disturbing feel when it comes to horror.
That's so interesting. I love to hear you say that, because I don't know that I had that particular thought before. But yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. And there are so many people now, I find it's interesting, younger folks are out there and they're trying to replicate that look with their photos. They're getting, point and shoot cameras. They want the Instamax, that, just absolute shitty resolution. But there's this sense of, I think for a lot of people, and it's interesting because I wonder how the brain thinks about memory, and does memory visualize differently in our minds? Does it, that it gives us enough of a distance, I think, to appreciate it in a different way. And it also gives us enough distance to not associate too much with the content, right? Or too much with the material, which a lot of people don't want to do. But I think there's a trend that is going back to retro. Let's get the cassette tapes and the VHS and I'm like, y'all just don't even know. You have no idea what it was like for us. But at the same time, there is an artistic element of that I find really compelling. And part of me is very happy that younger generations are trying to find a way with light leaks and with all kinds of filters pre and post production to recreate that feel. But what really interests me is why is that feel important to us? Because it is important to me. So, and I think it's that distance.
And I agree. I think it's the distance, but it's also it was unforgivable. Like unforgiving. I mean, think about it. When you listen, what I did before we had smartphones, I would go out with the disposable camera. I would go out at the disposable camera, and that thing was unforgiving because you don't know what the fuck was going to be.
Thank you.
You don't know what the fuck the outcome is going to be. Like
2 weeks.
I know it's going to be a surprise. You're going to get a fucking surprise. But even like VHS, like you were going to get a surprise. You couldn't just go back and just say, "Oh, well, that didn't look good." It was a surprise.
Exactly. And there was no post curation. This is the whole thing too about, at least for photographers and thinking about digital versus film. is that unless you were really good in the darkroom, and I really wasn't, I mean, I could hold my own with the black and white, but that's where it ended. And now, and so you had to craft that. You had to have enough presence of mind to frame, to think about light, to shoot, and to hope you got something that you could use. And now it's like, just grab the image, just grab it. Use a raw file, but just grab that image, and you can curate and crop and do this. And it's a different creative process. I'm not saying one's better than the other, but I was trained in one. And now I'm doing the other. So, generationally, like somebody should do a longitudinal study at some point and see how, just how that mental process plays out differently between generations, because the art is different. It definitely is.
And the generation today would never know or understand what it's like to have a picture of taking you and your fucking eyes are bloodshot red. Like, almost like you're a demon. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
They would never understand that.
Yes, absolutely. And then, like you were saying, that with the technology being so unforgiving with the absolute detail, and then people wanting to go in and smooth it out, and they're like, no, I don't want that much detail. You can see these blackheads, and you can see this. And so I'm always, floating around in that nerdy ether of, why do we not want to see things so clearly? Or why do we want to see some things clearly and others not? And how are we using images to think about ourselves? And that's why I love photography, but that's why I really love horror, because it feels like it's so unapologetic about being human. And we just, good Lord, we need more of that. We need the unapologetic feelings about being able to do anything, talk about anything, to be uncomfortable, to be scared, to be dissonant, and to make art out of that is really, that's really, really fucking rebellious. I mean, it's like the punk rock of film genres.
I agree, because horror is meant to be offensive. If you're easily offended, stay away from horror. But horror, I mean, especially in the 80s. In the early 90s, horror was supposed to be offensive. It was misogynistic. It was racist. Yep. It was homophobic. It was every single thing you wanted, but you loved it for what it was. And that's the one genre that there was. Well, horror and comedy used to be that way.
Yes,
comedy used to be that way, but comedy has died, unfortunately. It has died, and because I feel like a lot of comedians and even filmmakers are afraid to push the envelope when it comes to comedy. Sure. They're afraid to offend someone, and those are two genres that I feel like they're supposed to be a little offensive, and they're supposed to be unapologetic.
Yes, absolutely. And you have to have somebody pushing on the edge. You have to have spaces for creatives to do things that that nobody else is going to do. And there's obviously people are hungry for that. And that's why the genres are so popular.
Now, as a spooky horror photographer, have you ever photographed anything that you were like, boy, I'm going to keep this in my own personal collection. I don't think this is meant for. I'm not talking about nudity. I'm talking about anything that you're.
Yeah, like, no, I know.
This might be too dark, or this might be too disturbing.
Much. Okay, so here's the weirdness, the weird response, but it's the true response is that I was not. My profession was not photography for many, 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 many years. I was a Middle East analyst. So exciting. Yeah, I know. You can tell it must have really had an impact, right? But I did a lot of work in South Africa and in Rwanda as well, doing kind of, in Rwanda, it was doing post-genocide work, looking at the version of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission that was there. I promise there's a point to this. So in doing that kind of documentary photography in Rwanda and in Palestine, I have images that I never want to see again, and that's a very different thing. I know that's not what you're asking necessarily, but I have images that when I got back and people were still developing film, I had to tell them, look, this is documentation for research. Don't call the cops. I'm not a freak. I'm not like putting bodies in my basement. So I have not been drawn to that since. And actually that work really wears on you, but it doesn't wear on you obviously as much as the people who have to live it and experience it. So now that I am in a new iteration, I seek out and I seek to create things that really embrace the creepy and the paranormal, the things that make me feel uncomfortable and in a weird way almost nostalgic. I don't know what I'm nostalgic for, but I just feel like there's a lot of yearning in the kind of creepy and horror photography, and that's really what I address. So the stuff that I have made that I don't want to ever deal with again was not made for artistic purposes, but for documentary purposes. And I think that's another reason why I have the weird relationship I do with horror, because so many things that I see that I've seen in person, I have to compartmentalize, you know?
Yeah. And listen, I totally get you. Like I spent time in East Africa, Uganda, Kenya, Liberia, unfortunately, you know, just some disturbing places, you know. And I'm also a mortician, so I see a lot of disturbing things.
Are you really?
Yes. So like I've seen a lot of disturbing things, you know, throughout my life, and
right.
So like when it comes to people like, well, how can you be a fan of horror? I've always been a fan of horror. My mom at a young age, but for me, horror, I cannot. There's only certain kinds of horror movies I can watch. I cannot watch mean horror films. You know what I mean? I cannot just overly mean horror films. I like blood and gore and all that good stuff, but I need a story. It has to be somewhat fun. It has to be somewhat. It can't just be mean spirited all the way through. So, but like. Because I mean, I just can't. At 42 years old, I can't just sit and just watch mean horror anymore.
I love the way though that you're categorizing that. That makes a lot more sense to me. You know, like the intention of cruelty or torture or whatever is one thing, but like Freddy Krueger,
yes,
and some of that other
Michael Myers. That's fun. That's fun.
I hate to say it's fun, but it is fun, right?
Yeah,
exactly.
That's fun stuff.
And I feel. Yeah,
I can't sit and watch Saw or Terrifier. I can't. It's so. It's just mean spirited to me. And listen, that's great, but that's what I love about horror. There's so many different subgenres.
Exactly.
That may not be for me, but that's for other people.
There's room for everybody in it. Yeah, absolutely. And that's why it's fun to be able to contribute as a creative in some way and still enjoy that part of it and not, you know, and be able to say, yeah, y'all have fun over there. I'm going to be over here. I'll be sitting over here with the devil. I'm from the South. And so the things that have where are you from? Can I ask?
I'm from North Carolina.
North Carolina. Okay. I'm from Arkansas, but you know, that's I'm still red dirt. And the things that really captured my imagination as a child, even though my family wasn't religious, and I'd be interested to know if the same is true for you, was this combination of rapture and the ascent and, you know, the omnipresence of the devil, especially out in natural settings. And, you know, things that really surrounded this kind of hyper evangelical narrative, but it was so like peopled with all of this mythology. And that was kind of smashed together with this, you know, potential nuclear apocalypse of the Cold War. So those are the things that kind of shaped my fear mechanism. And yet I'm still fascinated by all of it. You know, it doesn't affect my life in the same way, but you know, when I go back to things that the things that really disturb me, like it used to scare the shit out of me. Think some morning I was going to wake up and come downstairs and like an egg would be burning up on the stove, and I go outside, nobody's in the house, the cars are all, you know, everybody's gone, which is also very apocalyptic, right?
It is.
You know, not a comment. But those are the things that now I find fascinating. And the kind of horror elements of The Exorcist or of anything again that really gets into, Blair Witch, that dances over into that space that I really wanted to be in as a child because I wasn't religious. So I was that devil girl. I find a lot of freedom in that.
See, I like, I think you and I, we're not the norm when it comes to horror things, but I like the found footage paranormal movies. I love Paranormal Activity. I love the whole series. I love Blair Witch, the first one anyway.
First.
I love that unknown that could possibly happen. Is this real? Do spirits happen? I'm going somewhere that I shouldn't, and something that I can't visually see is attacking me, or not even attacking. Because those movies, the thing that the spirit usually doesn't attack. I mean, towards the end, but it's almost like they're toying with you.
Yes, absolutely. And I love exactly what you said about that. The unknown element, the ambiguous element, which I think, obvious point here, but we all struggle with is like, that's the human condition, is that we don't know why we're here. We don't know what's going to happen. We don't know what happens after we die. We really don't know anything. And we live our lives like we do. And so there's so much freedom, almost like with certain types of Buddhism, to just be like, okay, I don't know. I'm a speck. I know nothing. And to walk into that experience in some of these films, I don't know. I find it liberating because it could be, I don't know, but I love that through my photos, I try to at least create a sense of liminality where people go, wait a minute, just enough to make people uncomfortable and remember that none of us know, in my opinion. I mean, I'm very clear about that for myself. And I studied religion. And I think now I know even less. I think it took things out of my brain. So
and I love to say that because I'm so open-minded. I don't discount anything. If somebody said aliens is this, I'm like, oh, okay, well,
all right.
Well, but let me hear why you hear. Oh, okay. Yes, I agree. I agree. I'm talking to Andrea. We're in two different states right now, and on some technology that's called, the internet. I have never ever met a human being who's smart enough to create so much the internet. Think about it. I've met some smart people, but I've never met no one that smart.
I know that's right.
So, I mean, maybe there are aliens, and maybe we do use their technology or their old technology. Who knows? Yeah. So, I don't know. I mean, do I believe in spirits and ghosts? 1%, yes. I do believe in that. 100%. 100%.
Oh, I thought you said 1%.
No, I believe in spirits and ghosts and demons and paranormal shit. But that's why I don't. But that's why I don't fuck with any of that stuff. You don't see me. You never see me playing with a Ouija board. I'm not going I'm not playing for that because I feel like that stuff is real. But I feel like you have to invite it into your life in order for it to.
I agree with you.
I feel like you got to invite it in.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like in so many of the horror films that I've enjoyed, the experience, it's all, I feel like I am experiencing the inside of another human's response to the unknown. So maybe they call that energy, for them it's demonic, or for other people it's ghost. And sometimes the spirits or the ghost are like some kind of cobbling together of consciousness of somebody from before, right? Like the same person. Sometimes it's just energy, like whatever it is, but it's however that artist is naming and curating their experience with the unknown. And it's different than mine. But since I don't know what's going on in the world and whatever, I like being able to encounter that unknown bit through other people's minds. And it can't be scarier than what's going on in here. So, I think we all create our own scariest spaces, but I hear what you're saying. And that is why I also believe in those energies. I don't know what I'd call them. I know that things are there and we probably see them all and name them differently, but it's the universe is made of energy, and energy never disappears, and it just does whatever it does. And so I'm willing to believe and to be open to just about anything. Why not?
Why not? I have a question. If you came back as a spirit or a ghost, would you be one of these spirits or ghosts who just will just remain silent and just unknown, or would you be one of the ones who would be fucking?
Oh hell no. Well, I think it would depend on what kind of powers I had, because I would go and fuck with some people who are, whose name shall remain silent, but who are out on the international scene wreaking havoc and death and fear and terror among innocents. I would go fuck with them big time. In terms of, if I could, which is probably not what a spirit should do, but I feel like so much of the energy of the universe really is toward mending or healing. And I don't mean that in like a kumbaya kind of way, but I just think that, it's like a boat in the water. It does want to right itself. It does want to come back to a point of stability. And I think that energy probably does that. And I know I would hang around and bug the shit out of my kids, like to the point where they'd be like, Mom, God. Yeah, my mom passed away 5 years ago. And there are things that happen all the time. And I'm not say like, is it her or is it energy? Is it just my perception? I don't know. And I don't care because I feel her near. Actually, she's right up here. She's on top of my.
Oh, literally.
She's right there. Hi, Mom. But she is constantly here, and weird things happen all the time, and dreams. And I'm just so grateful that there's some kind of connection that, that we can have, even if it's just from my side in my perception. Yeah. So yeah, that's what I do. I'd be real sweet on some people, but I would fuck up some people too.
Yeah. So my mom passed away, and both my parents are deceased. And like, I thank you. And I feel like to like, I hope they're watching over me, but sometimes I'm like, I hope they're not watching.
I hope they're not.
Right? I'm like, holy moly, I hope they're not watching me. Like that's the other thing. I hope they're like, I hope they walk in the room and like, oh. When they walk back out,
I didn't see a thing. That's hilarious.
Oh,
yeah.
Andrea, where can everyone find you and your work?
Oh my gosh. Well, I am on. I'm on Instagram. And I have like the Behance page and the Adobe photography portfolio, all this stuff. But essentially, I go by my little company name, which is Aspexy Images. And that's where they can find me. And I would probably send you the spelling of that because it's not intuitive. But I do a ton of collaborative work under other names, really interesting, fun, like truth-telling narrative stuff. A lot of anti-racism work and indigenous stories. So there's a whole other compartment to the work that I'm doing. But I have to say, this is really where the heart of my creativity is. So I appreciate being able to talk with you about it.
Listen, everybody, down in the description box, I am going to have the link to where to find Andrea. So definitely follow her and her work. Andrea, this has been a blast.
It really has been. I feel like I wish we lived closer because I think you and I would be big buds.
I 100% agree. I 100% agree. I have no reason to go to Arkansas either. Like, does Arkansas have horror conventions, by the way?
You know what? They actually do. I don't live in Arkansas anymore, though. I live in Rochester, New York. And yes, we have them up here. We have the Upstate Horror Festival. I don't know where Thing in the Basement is. You would probably know. It's not. Is that New York?
I'm in New York. So right now, I live in Baltimore, actually.
Oh, okay.
Not super far. So yes, I'm in New York a lot. So
yeah, I'm in DC all the time too. So yeah, okay.
Perfect. That's right around the
You
corner.
and I, we're totally going to meet up because I love the stuff you're doing. And again, horror fans, y'all are a rare breed. And I'm glad you're out there creating and being unapologetically in a world that needs you to be unapologetic.
I 100% agree. And that's why I made this channel to shine a spotlight, because there's so many horror creators that don't get the spotlight shining them and attention they needed. And
exactly.
hey,
Exactly.
This is the place. And
It is the
Andrea,
place.
you're absolutely fucking awesome.
Thank you. So are you.
Listen, I'm more than welcome. Listen, also, too, but by the way, thank Magic of Horror Film Festival also.
Yes. Thank you, Magic Horror.
Yes.
Well
Listen,
done.
if you're a filmmaker, artist, and you want a legit film festival to go to, because there's a
Yes.
lot of them that are not.
Yes.
That's definitely one.
Absolutely. As is this channel.
Yes, subscribe to the channel. Subscribe.
Do it. I'm going to come hunt you.
Yes. Everyone, thank you for coming to the horror room. I'm Travis Bruce, and that's Andrea. We'll see you next time.
All right. Thanks, Travis.
You're welcome.